Kia ora, and welcome to Oho Ake Books. My name is Whareus Lysander. I want to talk about today the experience of my possession in Dunedin in the mid-90s and how this experience helped me to embody the process of channeling. Strangely enough, it really helped me, looking back at this experience now many years later, how this situation where I was possessed by a spirit in Dunedin in the mid-90s, living in the Octagon, an apartment. It used to be an old brothel. And how this experience enabled me to have the ability to start channeling parts of myself from multidimensional existence, and how that brought into my life at the time the voice of Buford Somerset. I didn't really know the level of involvement I would have with this particular character after this initial experience, because I was possessed, and after my possession it created this space inside my being for Buford Somerset to come into my being. Of course, at the time I wasn't really occupying my lower chakra system because my trauma from my childhood had made me focus my awareness and my mindfulness and my point of attention in my upper chakras, because it was just too painful to be in my lower chakras and be completely embodied in to be completely embodied in my physical being, because the nature of my experience as a child had left me in a place where I was constantly in my head or in my upper chakras, constantly observing situations, observing environments to find the safest way that I could interplay with people that were around me so that I wouldn't be hurt in any way and I'd feel safe. And in order to do that, I really needed to be in a place where I was fully engaged in the present moment, but at the same time able to flick a switch, and then with that switch flick be able to move into my imagination. I could play, I could pretend, I could embody being somewhere else and be somebody else, really. And by doing that, would find solace. But what this also did for me as well, in the mid-90s when I became possessed, it allowed this other aspect of myself from across multidimensional existence to find its way into my body, and to channel the information and channel the energy that was the residue, the psychic residue that was in my body from my experience of being possessed, to channel that psychic residue into a way that would not embody me and imbue me deeply and leave a traumatic scar on my life that would not enable me to be able to function and to continue on with where I was moving through at the time in regards to my conscious spiritual awakening processes. So Buford helped me immensely to move through this process, have this psychic residue, find a place and a way to use it creatively and constructively to write the short stories that I wrote at the time, which was basically 1B5 textbooks. I filled them both in less than 2 weeks, and I was writing like pure stream of consciousness. I wasn't taking a pause. I was picking up a book and the stories were being channeled through me. I couldn't quite hear Buford's voice at the time, but I remember the words formulating in my head and the stories manifesting in my mind. I could see the entire process of what I was writing about, but never could quite understand what was going on. All I felt was the urge to write, and to write I did. I wrote a lot, and in that process of writing I brought in Buford, and looking back at it now, he helped me to move through this crazy experience of being possessed, finding a way to channel that psychic residue and release it. And the stories that I wrote back in the day then, back in 1994, were so wild to me. The ideas, some of them are quite graphic, and some of the stories that I wrote back then, and these stories became The Darkness Holds Sway, the first collection of short stories with the Lord Buford Somerset that I wrote. some of these stories that I wrote back then actually took place in the flat where I was living at the time. And one of them was pretty much, one of the stories I wrote in that collection of short stories was about the spirit that was in the house possessing somebody else who had come to fix the toilet, and that person being possessed, crawling into our attic space above us in the flat, us thinking that he had fixed the toilet and then gone back home, and he had snuck into the roof cavity, and being in the roof cavity he waited for us to all to go to bed, and then he killed us, all of us, in very inventive ways. And it was, you know, writing that was pretty heavy, knowing that you're living at the house at the time. And you know, I gave myself a pretty dire and graphic and grisly death, but that process of writing about this was so, for me, it relented and allowed me to find a great deal of pressure valve opening and letting it go, because I was never going to commit these crimes. It wasn't never me that's going to commit these horrible atrocities. I was never, and I haven't got a bone in my body that would ever allow me to do something like that. But the energy was in me. I could totally feel as though this was her long-term goal, I think, in regards to protecting what she believed to be hers. And this is a difference. This is a story that I haven't elaborated on in regards to my possession, what it was like, and what the reason why she possessed me and who she was. At some point, I'm going to do a video about that, and I'm going to do more anecdotal stories about my life experience, and tell some crazy tales about my life and what I've gone through and what I've experienced over the years in my conscious personal awakening, but also what I've experienced full stop in regards to the process of creating awoke, and how the experiences that I had over the years have gone into this full creation, this full gamut of what I do and what I do create, and the stories that I tell and the information that I portray in those stories, but also the lessons that I've learned over the years of doing this. And I think it's really important to come to a more personalized element and me telling you why I do what I do. Thanks for watching. I truly appreciate it. Aotearoa. I'll see you again soon.